Chookagian. I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I am joined by one of the elite fighters in the UFC women's flyweight division. At UFC 238, she notched her 12th career win, beating Joanne Calderwood by unanimous decision. She is the blonde fighter herself, Katlyn Chookagian. Katlyn, thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, so Katlyn, blonde fighter. I think the first most important question is, why the heck are you not fighting Valentina Shevchenko and Liz Carmouche? What's happening here?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I think that the UFC right now just has so many shows on, and they're just like scurrying to try to find like main events and fill up cards because they have so many fights booked. I mean, they had asked me to fight on September 7th, and I'm getting married on September 8th, so it wouldn't have worked.
No, not for the pictures.
Yeah, so it's super bummer. The reason why I planned the whole wedding was because I was like, all right, I'm fighting in June, I'll get married September, and Valentina was fighting on the same day in June, so I was like, usually champs unfortunately don't get to fight that often, so I was like, all right, this is perfect, I'll wait to have it after. So I kind of decided last minute to do a wedding, and I crammed it so I can cram everything in. And yeah, they wanted us for Abu Dhabi. And then, I said, I'm not canceling my wedding for that. It's so soon. And I just feel like I deserve, that's already kind of a quick turnaround. And then they weren't, the UFC wasn't upset with me. They understood. And, so yeah, they said that she was gonna fight Liz, and then I'll get the winner of that.
In a situation like that, do you feel like stepping on toes, or do you not feel like stepping on toes? Do you say to them, look, I want this title shot, can you wait till October, or could you try and do it in August? Is there any conversation like that, or it's kind of like, look, this is our offer, you have to take it or you don't have to take it, and you're kind of in a difficult position?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say that. Like, listen, I want it, and they know that. Yeah. It's not like, I was like, can we do it any other time? Like, that's so quick. That's why I planned it. They knew that when when I was booking my June fight before I booked the wedding, before I made the wedding date, I was like, I need to make sure I didn't want to book the fight in case before I didn't want to book the wedding date until I knew when my fight was. So they knew about that, and it was just unfortunate, but they said they needed that, so that, that's just kind of how it is. I said, could I wait? But Valentina's ready to fight, so they were going to use her as an opportunity to fill up a card that they needed, a main event in.
Now, before we move to talk a little bit about that fight that's coming up, what did you think of Valentina's performance versus Jessica Eye? I mean, did it play out like you thought it was? Were you a little surprised? Did you think Jessica Eye, would have put up a bigger fight, would have lasted longer? Did you think maybe it was just a bad matchup and Jessica was doomed from the start of the moment she signed the contract? What was your thoughts on how that fight played out?
I mean, that's pretty much how I thought it was gonna. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, she's definitely gonna get knocked out, but I think that's definitely a threat. I know before I fought Jessica, I watched a couple of her fights, and I did notice that she gets rocked with head kicks a lot. Like, I mean, her last fight, even fights that she's won, she's gotten rocked really bad with head kicks. So if you really watch all her fights, you can kind of see that against girls that she already beat. So Valentina's a big step up, and I think that she thought. I thought her wrestling and her grappling was going to be, an advantage. But I mean, I think she was just underestimating Valentina's wrestling and grappling, which I think everyone underestimates. They just think of her as a striker. Yeah. I mean, no one takes Johanna down, and she took her down 7 times. Yep. I feel like no one really talks about that. They just think of her as she's a vicious striker. But I'm like, her takedowns are really good. Yeah. They're kind of sneaky because there are a lot of trips and upper body throws, but yeah, I think that Jessica was just a little intimidated and underestimated her.
Now, you fought Liz Carmouche previously. You beat her in your second fight in the UFC.
I actually didn't beat her. I lost.
Oh, that was I'm sorry then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a split decision loss.
Oh, split decision. Okay. How do you think that fight will play out, because I mean a lot of people were surprised that she got that fight instead of you, of course. Now, telling me what you
Mhm.
tell me, it makes some sense why that happened. Do you think, how do you think the fight's going to play out? Do you think she's improved since you fought her, in the time since then? How do you see that? Do you think she'll be a tougher test for Valentina than Jessica I was?
I definitely think she's a tougher opponent than Jessica. I think she's has experience, well rounded. I think she has more of a mental strength than Jessica, where she's been there and isn't going to be too intimidated. Um, that's just like my opinion from the outside. I don't really know either of
Right.
them personally, but you know, with Liz, it's hard for me to say anything because I did lose to her. But with her, it's kind of when I watch her fights, it seems like sometimes she looks really good, and other times she did, I'm like, that's not doesn't look like the same. Oh, sorry, I was like, sometimes it doesn't look like this, the same one. She's kind of seems a little bit hot or cold, but when she fights really well, I think she's really well rounded and has really good takedowns and grappling. But that being said, I just don't see her beating Valentina. I don't think her striking's not very isn't that good, and I don't think her strategic or like I don't think her level of striking is high enough for that, and I think that her grappling and her grappling and wrestling is probably about the same as Valentina.
Now, I mean, you mentioned that they at least told you that we would be next after Liz and Valentina fight. Hopefully, they keep their promise. UFC is kind of weird with those kind of things. Um,
There are no promises. They said that, but
oh, it's
being
possible.
realistic,
Yeah,
being realistic, I
yeah,
don't take that. I'm not gonna. I won't hold my breath, but that's what they said.
yeah.
So,
Now,
and that would make
uh,
sense. Obviously, there's potential for like, if Liz would win, depending how it went, they would probably give her a rematch,
yeah.
or if there was like a draw or something weird or whatever, Valentina wins and someone else, then they just give it to someone else. You never know.
Now, saying that,
But
let's say you get the shot next after the
mhm,
wedding. A great wedding gift to you that would be. How do
mhm.
you feel you match up with her? What makes you different than Jessica I, than Liz Carmouche? Because you also lost to Jessica I. I'm sure a lot of people will question. Oh, well, she lost to both of them. She's not
Right.
gonna be able to beat Valentina. But also if you know MMA math does not really work. So, what makes you feel you have the right kind of technical skills and attributes that will give Valentina Shevchenko a really difficult fight?
I think the big advantage that I have over the other girls is like my striking is very high level. I have footwork, which most of the girls, even that are good strikers, they don't really use footwork. I mean, you probably see that in some girls in other divisions, but in the flyweight division, I don't really see any girls that have good boxing footwork and good technical moves and head movement and stuff like that. Um, I think that the girls that are good at striking are just very tough and aggressive, but technically, I think that I'm at the top of the division, and I think that my footwork and my head movement and
Now,
everything.
going away from all these possible fights and things in the
Mhm.
past or whatever, or the future. Now, I want to get to the Calderwood fight, which was another pivotal win in your career. You two were kicking the hell out of each other in that fight.
Mhm.
First, your leg was very red, as was hers. How much did that affect you as the fight progressed? And was the back and forth all a part of the game plan? You said, okay, I'm gonna kick her leg. That's part of the strategy for this particular fight. Or at some point, is there a kind of thing like she's kicking me? I'm gonna kick her back. There's like a competitive one upsmanship. Was that any of those elements involved? And how do you deal with those kind of kicks and continue on?
Well, luckily she was just throwing like inside low
Mm-hmm.
kicks. And it left a really good mark, but because it was an inside low kick and it was mostly with just like her toes, it was more of a slap, so it didn't affect me at all.
Okay.
Um, if it, on the outside, there was one she landed on the outside. It was kind of like closer to my knee that left the bruise. That hurt the most. But the inside ones weren't affecting me. So when I watched the tape, I was like, oh, okay, I could see where like it looks bad,
Yeah.
but in the fight, I'm like, they're not hurting me. And every time she throws one, I throw four punches.
Mm-hmm.
So who cares? And no, it wasn't a plan like, oh, she kicked me, I kicked her. I kick a lot. So she did a bunch of like the inside slap kicks
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and then but I felt like my low kicks were actually buckling her legs and stopping her from moving, whereas it didn't affect my movement at all. I didn't even limp. My leg never buckled or anything. It just they were more like annoying, more points. But
Mm.
yeah.
Now she's known to be a very good, skilled, durable fighter, and she beat the Violence Queen not too long ago in her last fight. When and your team were preparing for her, where did you see avenues that you could strike successfully against her, and did you feel you executed them, or was it the kind of thing like your natural skills, your high level striking, as long as you just played your game, you would have found the holes and you would have achieved what you wanted to anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched hers and everyone talks about how good her striking was and everything, and when I watched her tapes, I actually didn't really like think that she was like that good of a striker. I mean,
uh,
I think she liked striking, but I didn't see anything like she kind of looked a little sloppy to me, and like she definitely doesn't have cardio. So all of her fights she gets tired, and I noticed that, and I was like, okay, boom, I never get tired, so that's easy.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, she had basic like Muay Thai striking to me. It wasn't anything crazy. Um, actually for her, I didn't. She kept before the fight kept talking about how I run away the whole
Hmm.
time and I don't fight. But I was actually watching her fights before, and she goes back. She doesn't go for it. So I'm like, wait, is she confused? Like I'm so confused. But I knew she doesn't push forward a lot, so
Mm.
I didn't have to use a lot of footwork with her. That was like one of my first fights where I wasn't moving around and using footwork because she didn't move,
Yeah.
so I didn't have to. So I was able just to stand in the middle and just throw punches, and she was always right there because she doesn't really move her head that much.
Now coming into that fight, it was the Jessica, the loss in that fight, but obviously you want to bounce back. You want to get back to your winning ways with the Calderwood fight. So that's his own kind of pressure, maybe not pressure for you, but did hindsight now knowing that you were close, you could have got the title shot, but things worked out the way they were. Did you go into that fight with an added pressure, not only to get back to winning, but did you feel like, okay, if I can just get back, get a win, it can get me right back into the title picture where you were anyway?
Um, yeah, I tried not to, with my fight with Jessica. I was almost the same, similar situation. Whoever won got the title
Mm-hmm.
shot. So I kind of dealt with that pressure in that fight, and I focused on that a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. It's easy to say now because I didn't win, so it's easy to say that. Maybe if I won, I wouldn't have thought that. So when I went into this fight with Joanne, similar thing. We had that pressure, and I chose not. I chose not to worry about that title fight and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I choose to just focus on this fight where I think I had the advantage over her in that aspect because she kept talking about, oh, if something happens, I'm going to fight for the title. I'm like, girl, I've been here before. Don't focus on that. Like.
Uh-huh.
And then she was like made 125, and then she said something about me not making 125. I was like, well, I already knew the girls were on weight, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not cutting weight. I'm focusing on this fight,
Mm-hmm.
even after weigh, and she's still talking about being the backup. It's like we're fighting in 24 hours. Focus here. But I was lucky enough because I went through that with
Right.
the previous fight, so I think I was in that similar situation as her. I felt the same way before, but so yeah, that wasn't the title fight. Wasn't pressure. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen. But definitely pressure I put on myself just because I'm like, damn, I lost that fight. I want that. I want that back. I don't want to. I don't want to have this feeling.
Right. Now, while researching you, I found an odd anomaly, which really surprised me. In that you are 5-2 in the UFC, one of the best in the division, a constant kind of contender last year or so. Yet you have never been, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've never been put on a main card of an event. Does something like that get frustrating? Does it honestly piss you off? It pisses me off a little bit, and I'm not even you. I'm not the fighter who's doing these good things. 5-2 in the UFC, one of the best. And not only does it bother you or possibly piss you off, does it? What do you chalk that up to? That oddness of that you have not been on a main card with all these cards they put on together.
Yeah, I mean, people like ask me that a lot, especially like our last fight. We were number one contender fight, and
Mm-hmm.
we were the first fight of the night. But there was a lot of number one contender fights. Every fight on that card was really good. There was 5 girl fights. Like someone's gonna have to go first.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of my fights have been really big cards.
Mm.
So I fought like the first MSG fight. I fought a lot of pay-per-view fights. So like, I think it's just that I'm on bigger cards, and the cards that I wasn't on that were big was like my first UFC fight. I don't get paid any different if I'm on main event or if I'm the
Mm.
first fight on Fight Pass.
Okay.
So to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
let's just get this over with. Just try to focus on the fight. I don't really care. I'm just all the only part important part to me is winning. So I'm lucky where I don't really care about that stuff too much. And you know, if I was getting paid more to be on the main card, I'd be pissed then. But yeah, I like getting the fight over, getting it over
Yeah.
with, and then enjoying food more.
You now you've hovered at the top of the division, for as long as it's existed, and been one of the better ones, and now
Yeah.
lately been a top contender that deserving of a title shot, and been viewed as that for a while too. In a world where Dana White says he wants killers. And criticizes a fighter for shooting double legs with 10 seconds is not something he likes. Do you feel the promotion sometimes unfairly treats fighters who try to be more tactical, more technical, strategic, and don't take risks for the sake of excitement and risk taking? Do you feel like they kind of mistreat those fighters in certain ways? And is it tough to, not be appreciated more for the skill that you are showing, because you're in a position with a lot of fighters that maybe don't get enough merit and aren't getting title shots they should, maybe because they're not quote unquote killers? Does something like that ever come to cross your mind at all?
I think when I was a little bit like, earlier in my career, I think that kind of bothered me. People were like, oh, you don't finishes. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have, after my fights, like, if you look at my faces compared to my opponent's
Mm-hmm.
faces, I don't really get hit that much. My opponents are always like bleeding all over the
Mm-hmm.
place, and it's like, that to me personally, that's more important. I'm
Yep.
like, I know I did the work, and I don't care, if their decisions, whatever. I'm not going to change my style to please a few people. I fight for me, not for everyone else. It's like I could go crazy and do all this stuff and be, talk all this crap, be entertaining, and then they put me on a main card, they promote me. But then as soon as you lose that next fight, when you're not being, doing your style and what works for
Mm-hmm.
you, they forget about you and you're going right back down, and then you're getting cut. So it might, some people fall into that trap for like one or two fights and they're like, oh, the UFC loves me, they're promoting me. It's like, yeah, well, if you're not doing if that's your style and it works, that's great, but that's not my style. So I'm not going to try to change it to please anyone. Cause like I said before, the most important part is winning. Like, my good friend Gregor Gillespie, he gets
Mm-hmm.
booed and people talk about how boring his fight is.
Mm-hmm.
All his fights is like, oh, it's so boring. All he does is lay on them. He has all except for one fight is first round finishes, and like they're like almost all first round finishes. He always gets fight of the night bonuses, and people say he's boring. I'm like, he has all finishes in the UFC. He's
Mm-hmm.
undefeated. He's never lost like a second of a
Yep.
fight, and it's like, and people say he's
Yeah.
boring. I'm like, he like murders people, and he gets bonus. It's so crazy. So you can't worry about that. You just gotta do your own thing.
Now, would you consider yourself like a student in the game, in terms of, are you a person that is watching not only just female fighters, not just fighting, but flyweights and other promotions? Like, are you checking out flyweights in Bellator, in Rizin, and One Championship, Invicta for sure? Are there any fighters outside the UFC that you admire and you wish you could compete with, or they were in the UFC?
Um, Not really. There's just so many fights,
Yeah.
and I think
Yes.
before women were so popular in the UFC, then I used to watch
Yeah.
other promotions because I just was drawn to like the women
Mm-hmm.
fighting. But now there's just so many fights. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I can't even watch all the UFC fights and stuff. But just like, I stick with that pretty much. Like I'll watch Invicta if like there's a couple girls that I train.
Mm-hmm.
Like I train with Deanna Bennett. If there's a couple girls that I know that I train with, Erin Blanchfield, Deanna Bennett, then I'll watch their fights. So just because I like, my training
Yeah.
partners, but other than that, not really.
Now, I always like to end the interviews with questions so fans can get an idea more about their favorite fighters away from fighting. Like, what
Hmm.
are your personal passions and loves away from fighting that have nothing to do with training, nothing to do with fighting? What's some weird, different things that some people may be surprised, like, wow, Kaylyn's into that? I would never, like, Kaylyn's big into, Game of Thrones. Didn't expect that. Like, what are some of your things that you really love that have nothing to do with fighting?
Like my main thing, and I mean, it's not that exciting, but I love going to the beach.
Okay.
I mean, any day. I live in Long Island right now, and we live right on the water. We have a boat.
Oh.
We take the boat right to the beach. Like if it's nice out, if it's kind of nice out, I'm on the beach. Like I have to go. I have to go. Like it's summertime now. I'm like I'm there all the time. I'm like I'll train. I'll take jujitsu at Henzo's in the early morning
Uh-huh.
class, so I can come home, so I can go to the beach. It's like, like today I went into Henzo's. Everyone's like, "Where were you? Why are you so tan?" I'm like, "Guys, it's summer. I went outside. We
Yeah.
live on an island." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, I put in work outside." So, but definitely like going on the boat and the beach is like any free time I have. If I'm not in the gym, that's what I'm doing.
Well, and I can almost understand what they're saying a little bit, because as a person, I'm in the Bronx. If a lot of them are
Mm-hmm.
in Manhattan and stuff like that, there's very few beaches on those islands or in those areas. Long Island clearly has the
Yeah.
best one, so I can understand that. But
Well, you can hop on the LIRR and be there in like no
that's
time.
true. And that's what I usually try to do
Mhm.
at least once a summer. And
Yeah.
then like, are there other, anything else other than, are you a big movie fan? So any movies, TV shows? Are you a Netflix binge watcher? A favorite music? Like what are some other things aside from the beach?
I'm into like cooking. I watch like the Food Network nonstop. I'm
Mm.
into,
What about
I'm just
MasterChef?
getting, huh?
MasterChef?
No, I'm like obsessed with like the kids cooking shows. I don't know why.
Oh, they got
Yeah,
MasterChef
yeah.
Junior. Me and my girlfriend watch that all the time. We love it.
They're so good. I'm like, I
Yes.
wasn't even allowed to touch the stove till
Yes.
I was like 17. And
Yes.
even then it was like only like I could only make eggs. I'm like, these
Yes.
kids like no, they're talking about food. I'm like, I've never even heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah,
They know
yeah.
how to do ingredients and like mix things that, like, you're 8, like you're supposed to be watching cartoons. Like like,
Yeah,
who's the
yeah.
parent that's saying, yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, honey, sure, spice whatever you want, use all the ovens, all the burners. You're 8. That makes fun. I don't. It's confusing to me.
Yeah, it's like the power of YouTube, I guess. You learn everything there.